Welcome to DevaTree's Love Who You Are podcast. If you're new to DevaTree, we certify meditation teachers and offer online courses in yoga for anxiety and teaching yoga to children. DevaTree's been a leader in the wellness industry for almost 30 years. I'm your host, Candice Lapointe. Join me as I connect with insightful guests who share the surprising places their meditation, yoga, and wellness journey have taken them. Navigating the human experience can feel perilous at times, but our guests share how embracing their radical uniqueness and applying self-compassion can change everything. Hi, friends. How are you? Or should I say, who are you? It feels so good to be sharing our second podcast episode where I'm joined by Kristi Corlett. She teaches DevaTree's faculty-mentored self-study program, Whispered Wisdom, Walking Between the Worlds of Yoga and Shamanism. Kristi wears many hats as a yoga instructor, shamanic practitioner and teacher, author, and kirtan musician. Uncoincidentally, our conversation dives into just that. Who are you, my friend? Why do we all have such an attachment to how we define ourselves? What are we ever becoming? Kristi shares the process of her shamanic journey work and how tapping into this practice can help us answer some of these big questions. In our conversation, Kristi speaks to the nudges she received to explore meditation, yoga, and shamanic journeying and how they played an immense role in her healing. She talks about the empowerment that comes from working with difficult things as they show themselves, and how stillness can help us to germinate our potential. She shares about the lessons she received through her off-grid lifestyle and our interconnection to all things within the cosmos. Even though our recording didn't come through in the greatest of quality, it doesn't detract from the powerful insight and wisdom that Kristi emits. I always treasure my time with Kristi, and I know you will too. Enjoy! The second podcast episode recording for the Love Who You Are podcast. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's a gorgeous day here in southwestern Ontario on the shores of Lake Huron. And how's it where you are in eastern Ontario?
Thanks for having me so much, Candice. And it is pretty gorgeous here too. We've had a lot of rain, which the forest needs because of the risk of fires this summer. And we're right in the forest, but it's warm. There are these wonderful cumulus clouds in the sky, blue sky, and all the trees are starting to bust out. So it's a spring morning here too in the valley. Yeah.
And this is always so interesting for me, Kristi, because of course I've gone through your DevaTree program, Whispered Wisdom, Walking Between the Worlds of Yoga and Shamanism. And I just wanted to thank you because you have brought into vision so many of these connection pieces. And I mean, I know that DevaTree is connected to nature and all the programs, but it's this program that has really rooted me in these observations, just as we were talking about introducing ourselves and connecting. It's like, what's going on in the weather? What's happening around me? And pulling in these nature pieces. So I really respect that about you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Kind words. And also, it's just a joy to hear that kind of feedback about your time with the course and your time with the group that we had, because that's the whole thing, right? The interconnection and the interweaving. And so not only, that we're taking a walk in nature, but that we are of nature, and that we notice with respect everything that's unfolding and honor it. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to kind of explain a little bit more about, what you do in general, not necessarily just what Whispered Wisdom is all about, but who are you? What do you practice? What do you preach?
Always practice, never preach. Is that the adage? Always try to stay humble. You don't really know. I try to remember those things for sure. What do? I am a being moving through this life with other beings, other lights of the divine. I love being in nature. I love focusing or perhaps inviting people to recognize that they're part of an entire cosmos that is living and breathing. And so I practice shamanic journey work. I teach it. I also offer sessions in community or online. And what else do I do? I'm a kirtan musician and songwriter. So one of the most wonderful things that I have the privilege of doing is practicing with groups of people and chanting the divine name and reminding them that divinity, that sacredness dwells in each of them. So those are a couple of the things I do. And what else can I say? I mean, there are always things doing, but and it's kind of that "who are you" question is fascinating to me, because I just listened to a podcast on the Here and Now, like the Here and Now podcast last night, and the question was, "Who are you? Are you a parent? Are you a teacher? Are you a lawyer? Are you defined by your profession? And are any of those things really adequate to describe what we are? Maybe it's what we are rather than who we are. I mean, we think like that we're souls that drop into these little skin bags, and here we are. Or we could be more respectful and call our bodies a temple. And that when I'm interacting with you and feeling you, I'm flowing out from my temple to touch you. You're flowing out from yours to touch me. And that whole joke about Jack Cornfield has this great thing he talks about. It's like, he looks at a person and he's like, how did you get in there? I'm in here. Is that you in there? How did we get here? And so everything in our lives unfolds from there. You know, we think we're doing things and we think we know who we are, but we may not really know. And I was thrilled to hear, Ram Dass was telling this story about how he appeared in this Australian magazine in this picture where he looked like really confused. And it said, the caption under the picture said, Ram Dass does not know who he is. And I laughed. It was so funny because it was like, when we get to a certain point, I think my whole gig right now is going from aspiring to be this or to be that, and beginning to focus on not unbeing, because we're all being if we're present in our bodies, that we're here, but that idea that it's really challenging to define ourselves. And what are the expectations of being asked, who are you? What do you do? What does that draw out from someone when you ask them? Or what are we thinking when we ask them that? I know it sounds a little airy-fairy, but it's where I'm at right now.
So interesting. And just what you were saying there, it's like, could you potentially be morphing? Obviously, from whatever we're going through in life, could your answer to that question, who are you, change, right? Like,
oh yeah,
obviously before I have children, like, do I consider myself a mother? If I go through different sorts of professions, maybe I would answer that question differently, that sort of thing. But I think it's very interesting in terms of just being able to have, like what you were saying, this expectation of trying to figure out who you are. And what are your thoughts about people who maybe don't necessarily have even the roots to understand who they are? What if they, we're all kind of trying to figure that out. And like you said, Ram Dass joking, like he doesn't know who he is. Like, I don't think we generally or will ever figure out who we are. And that's kind of the beauty of it all too. But I feel like that is such a big question right now that people really do try to define. Again, who are you? And the feelings that maybe come along with not necessarily knowing who you are, the expectation of you planting that question on yourself so strongly, I don't know, right? It's
Oh yeah. I
definitely
mean,
a difficult thing to grapple with.
it is, and or to stop grappling with. I mean, I can remember one time my teacher saying to me, I'm really struggling with such and such, and she said, "Stop struggling." And I was like, "Oh yeah," which is,
Sometimes I
our
feel like maybe that's easier said than done, right? Like, oh yeah. I feel like sometimes we feel like, and this could just be my experience too, that like, you know, who are we? Things are happening to us. I think sometimes we forget that we are of the divine, that we are, more than perhaps just these was it skin sacks that you said? Or skin bags?
I think I did.
So,
Yeah.
like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, I think I cut you off there, Kristi, but it's kind of
Oh
like,
no.
oh,
It's fascinating. I mean, it's very fascinating to me, this idea of, and when you were speaking, I was thinking of this concept of, from my Celtic shamanic practices, the idea that, for instance, the land of the fairies, we speak of that as one of the realms, and people love fairies, don't they? A lot of people do. And they may find it woo woo, but actually, there's so much wisdom in these old stories that the land of fairy is the land of ever becoming. And isn't that interesting in terms of what could even simply the expression ever becoming mean? And you were describing it, that idea that we may be transitioning, we may be have an identity as a daughter or a son or a certain person as a therapist or a career like a teacher or whatever that is, and we think, okay, I've defined myself, that this is what I am. If you're at a party, typically in our culture, and you're meeting people, well, what do you do? What, and so what do you say when someone says, what do you do? If I say I'm a shamanic practitioner, yoga teacher, and kirtan musician, a lot of people conventionally, and I must allow for this, will be, like, what is that? What is that? I don't understand. It seems a little out there. But when do we ever ask, how is it with your soul? We don't ask that question. It seems, again, almost taboo in our culture. Anything that smacks of spirituality or let's not even use the word God, but that whole we've been so denuded. We've had all our branches cut off because these, the spiritual practice can seem suspect because it might be religious, which is right out for most people as soon as you use the word religion. And very many people, of course, say, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. That's often heard, isn't it? And I would probably say that too. And so how do we define ourselves? And do we need to define ourselves, or are we always and ever becoming? Are we evolving? Sometimes when we choose to define ourselves and say, I am, I'm a shamanic practitioner. That's what I am. That's what I do. Here I am in that box, whatever that box may be. However, what else am I becoming? And what else am I learning each day that's changing me incrementally in every moment? Can I be present in the present moment and without a need to define myself? It's so interesting because we like to describe things in words and put them in boxes so that we're comfortable with them. I think in our culture, it helps us if we say, oh, Kristi, she's that person who gives those funny drum circles, or, they might not say funny, but she gives drum circles, or, oh, she does spiritual healing work, or she works at the community resource center and she does their social media stuff. That's Kristi. And yeah, it is, but it isn't in every moment. And so it's this nebulous thing, actually. who are we? I am beginning to come to that sense. I mean, maybe it's because I'm getting older, and maybe I'm starting to think about mortality, ever changingness, transitions, and so that's where kind of my practice in my mind is playing right now, is that those questions that define us and our attachment to who we think we are. Is it healthy? Is it useful? Is it necessary? Maybe. I love hearing what people have to think about that sort of thing.
And so how is it that, like, there's these big questions again, who are we? Who am I? And how does shamanic journey work fit into that? How can shamanic journey work be used or be explored to help us answer some of these big questions?
Well, it is in doing a shamanic journey, you're tapping into ecstatic knowledge. You're going straight to source. Some people would prefer to describe it as we're going into the vastness of our deep imagination. I prefer to say we're asking spirit, spirit being present in all things, you, me, the rocks, the trees, the rivers, the animals, all beings everywhere. And the vastness of that isn't even something the human mind can grasp. And so when we do shamanic journey work, if we say, we start drumming and we go into a relaxed trance-like state, we have the opportunity to ask these vast questions. We can ask what we might consider smaller questions, like, should I be thinking about transitioning, into a new job, or how do I cultivate more material abundance, and try to be as specific as we can. But we also, along the way, often discover a lot of things about identity, about dancing with the shadow, and finding out spirit's really good at presenting to us what we're attached to. What am I clinging to that's causing me suffering? Is there anything that I can change or shift so that I'm suffering less? Maybe spirit points out to us where we're taking life too seriously, or where we're being harsh with ourselves or harsh with others. We might be very angry with someone or feel that they're hurting us, and we might feel victimized. And so we ask spirit, how can I make this stop? Or how can I change this or transition this? And spirit might playfully teach us to take off the victim's cloak and put on the sovereignty cloak. And I don't mean in terms of imperialist systems and kings and queens in that way, but in terms of recognizing that spirit is always watching us in loving awareness, and that dwells within us as well. And our responsibility is, in donning that sovereignty cloak, is to act accordingly, to recognize that light that's shining in ourselves. For some people that is very, very difficult because of the trauma they've experienced. And so sometimes spirit, like, the old stories of the dragon guarding the treasure. And if we're respectful to the dragon, and if we're sincere and devoted to asking if we could have a little of that treasure, spirit can be like that and can reveal itself that way in a shamanic journey, that we get a little bit of healing, just enough, or information or wisdom that helps us in that moment. It's what we need to hear just then. Whether we expected to hear it or we think we want it is another question altogether. But there may be a clue there that comes to us in a shamanic journey, because these things are revealed in metaphor, usually. Whatever we see, experience, feel, have a knowing of. And that little clue might help us along our way just a little bit. It might shift things just a little bit. And if we don't get it, and we keep continuing in a pattern of behavior that's causing us suffering, the universe is very kind and will keep giving us the same message in different ways. And so I suppose that the way we get plugged into the big questions with shamanic journey work is simply to practice it. You practice it like you'd practice a musical instrument or a sport. You do it and you see what happens and you listen, and then you reflect and you journal, and you, if you're willing to sort of do that study and explore those questions and really learn from it, that's where we get the transformation, the healing, the answers a lot of times. And we will never have all the answers because we just are not in this form. We cannot contain all those answers, but we can be open to receiving them.
And so you were kind of painting the picture there, but could you maybe explain a little bit more about the process of a shamanic journey? And you mentioned the drumming and entering a trance-like state, and just how the visions come through, the journaling. That could you maybe go into a little bit more detail about what someone could expect if they were going to go through a shamanic journey? Are you interested in uncovering a freer, more playful side of yourself and studying a new branch of yoga at the same time? If you felt stagnant or stuck in your yoga teachings or your own practice, our HeartRise Children's Yoga Teacher Training will help you break through and uncover an original source of joy. This course brings creativity into your life and will revolutionize your relationships with children and youth. HeartRise was designed by experienced therapists and yoga educators and has helped hundreds of people transform their practice and teachings. To experience this transformative online course, head to DevaTree.com, www.devatree.com. See you there.
Sure. And of course, there are numerous methods of going through shamanic journey work. My practice involves drum and rattle, and that can be with a steady monotonous rhythm, very soothing, and can bring us into that theta brainwave state where we can relax, where we can go into our deep imagination. And the drum is a constant sound in the background while we're doing the journey work. The constant rhythm helps us stay focused and to stay in the journey state, which is that theta brainwave state. I mean, there are meditative states too. A lot of people who are watching this podcast have probably experienced meditation. So in the way that I practice it, I would drum on behalf of someone, or I would drum for myself. I would enter that open-minded, that expansive state where I can then ask a question that I've formulated in advance. And I always say we go into the shamanic realms, into the trance state, into journey work with an intention. Generally, we don't just go just to play around, although that could be the intention. But we have a question that we're hoping to explore, or healing that we're seeking, information we're seeking, and we formulate a question so that we have an intention. And when the drum begins, we allow ourselves in our imagination to place ourselves in this. In some place, usually in nature that we love. So we've been there. We begin with imagination. And if we are open and willing to experience it, that monotonous rhythm of the drum or rattle will help us allow the journey to unfold. So what we think we're imagining may actually be the journey unfolding. And we can sort of start to let go of expectations, let go of analyzing anything that we notice, that we sense, that we see, hear, or feel, and simply be open to have that adventure, to have that journey. When the drum beat changes and we recognize that, we bring our attention and our consciousness back to the room where we started. So right back to what we might call ordinary reality. And when we're back, because where have we really gone? We can take up a pen and journal and record the experience. And you may know from, you've done journey work, and anyone who has, or even if you've had a very profound meditation, a person might notice how fast that experience will fade when we're back into ordinary reality. So here we are, we've got to get those groceries done now, or the laundry, or we need to go to an appointment and we didn't write it down. Can we remember the details later? And so we journal in order to reflect, and then we can analyze all we like. We don't analyze and be really in that thinking mind when we're in the journey state, but afterwards we can write down what we remember, the important points. It's like writing out a story, and then we have this to reflect upon. Perhaps days or weeks later, we can still go back and refer to what we've written and go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And, you know, when I saw that great big elephant, that was probably symbolic of such and such, you know. So the symbols may reveal themselves to us in time if we don't understand what we experienced in the journey. So that's kind of the process.
And I can very much attest to, obviously, like you said, going through journey work with you, and the answers, if you will, that I received after moving through a journey with an intention. And I'm not sure if I ever told you this, Kristi, but I can't remember what exactly, where we were going, if we were going to like visit a particular being or what have you. But I feel like my intention, and this was a big question, was whether or not I was at a place in my life to be trying for another child. And so I'm just recalling this now is and like you said, it's like all of the details. There's so many, and so journaling is super important right after going through a journey. But I remember this vividly, that I had gotten a vision of flowing down a river, and I was within, it was almost like a fish egg. I was within a fish egg, and I was flowing down the river, and all of a sudden I was implanted onto the side of the riverbank. Like I was just holding on there. And so then after coming through with the rest of this journey and coming to ordinary reality, it's like I for sure knew what that meant. And lo and behold, after this message had come to me, like, boom, there was my Phoebe. Like I got pregnant like shortly thereafter. And I always think like that was her telling me, like, I don't know if that's, you know, again, these beings or souls coming into play, but I was like, oh, message received, you know?
I love that. What a
Yeah.
beautiful story.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just, I mean, I tease my students about this stuff. I might say another word usually when I'm talking to them, but this stuff works. It's there's ordinary reality where we are right now, and there's non-ordinary reality. This is a kind of a dualistic way of looking at it, but they're so close together, and there's so much energetically that's available to us. The realm of spirit is unlimited, and we are, if we only could come to it and remember it, we are unlimited because we are of spirit. Yes, we're embodied, of course we're here, and we have very practical things to do in this form, but there's so much available to us. And we, if we open our hearts to receive and to listen, and some people would call that listening to our inner voice, listening to spirit within us. The words aren't as important as the experience and the learning and the wisdom that comes from it, and the tuning in and the letting go. I mean, you know, it's all part of the spaghetti sauce, as I like to say. As the old commercial said, it's all in there. We're part of it.
Well, it's just so interesting though, too, right? Because I think about, you know, this whole idea of making space for healing work and for, you know, the spiritual stuffs. Because sometimes I feel like we are forgetting that those pieces, right? Like you were saying, you're the tree that with the limbs all cut off. And it's not until something big comes knocking at your door that you feel like you need to return or to enter into this kind of work, right? So, um, what brought you into your spiritual work? And was shamanic journeying there for you right away, or is this something that you kind of came into?
Beautiful question. I always think about I think about coming out of university after my last degree, and I think about um, first I was teaching. I was teaching as a supply teacher. It was very stressful. I didn't feel that it was. I didn't quite feel right. I'd studied all these years. I thought I was supposed to be a teacher. I was teaching in the school system, quite structured, and I was so stressed, and my body was sick. And I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a really nasty inflammatory condition of the digestive tract. And I was often finding myself angry. If I would talk to counselors, they might say, "Oh, I think you're okay, and I think we should really focus on the future," or "You don't want to go into psychoanalysis, for instance, because I think that would just exacerbate things for you." Which is, these are all great messages, because what I was taking as "nobody wants to listen to me," were actually, I see them as nudges by the universe, putting these people in my path to allow me to discover where I did need to be. And because I was suffering and clinging to things and stuff, I thought, okay, meditation, what is it? I picked up a book at the library to find out the most basic meditation methods, and I just started with some very simple exercises and breath work. And then I ended up beginning to study yoga with a wonderful woman by the name of Tamika. She'll be no plugs here. I began to study hatha yoga, and found it not only physically, it was a beautiful practice, but it was plugging me into a lot of things. And I think this was before I started shamanic practice. This is before I met the woman who would be my teacher. But one of the important encounters I had with my shamanic teacher was, I simply went as an individual to see if this practice would be of benefit in healing. And I explained kind of a lot of what I'm explaining right now. And she said, "Kristi, I will listen." That opened up an incredible world for me. I felt held, I felt listened to, deeply listened to. And, it was an opportunity to let go of that, an invitation to let go of, no one's listening to me. No one gets me. I can't explain this to anyone. Well, there was someone who was listening. And I found in receiving shamanic journey sessions over time, they were making a massive difference in my ability to let go of things, to heal trauma that was past, but was still being held by me. And over time, I found it so effective. I wanted to learn to do it myself, and I wanted to learn how to be able to share that with others. So at first, I think I kind of came through meditation into yoga, and also in the same yoga studio where I began my yoga practice, my hatha yoga practice, I also met the woman who would become my shamanic teacher. And so it all flowed the way it was meant to flow. And all of this has changed my life incredibly. It's been amazingly transformative. I can scarcely begin. And I'd go on for hours. So I'm going to let you
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
take some focus.
Yeah. So you mentioned before, like this more conventional lifestyle, as you will, like, working as a supply teacher and doing the things, obviously, which had an impact on your well-being, and being able to take a step back and look for the tools necessary to help you bring some of this healing, right? And I I met you and I believe that you were already living at the Hollow. And I wanted to know a little bit more about that. Were you guided into this lifestyle? So if you can explain to everybody, you're now living, so you were living in London, Ontario, and now you're living in Eastern Ontario, and you're off grid, right? Is
Yeah,
this right?
yeah. Yes, you
Yeah.
got it right. Absolutely. Yeah, we moved to a tiny community in Eastern Ontario eventually. This was many years in the making. We were living in London fairly happily, but over time it became evident to us, myself and my husband, that we wanted to be out in nature more. We wanted a quieter place to live. We wanted more space around us. And with my shamanic practice expanding, I mean, just the joy of being in nature, touching the earth, having the sounds of bird song, the wind in the trees, all of these things. And so we began looking, and it took us quite a few years to find something. We found a beautiful little piece of land in Eastern Ontario, and we were able to buy the land and begin to build something to live in. And it was really getting aggravating being in the city. We were ready to make a big transition, and he was a solar technician, so he wanted to go with solar power, which we did. And we are still transitioning. We still don't have running water, so we are still definitely chopping wood and carrying water, as the old Buddhist advice goes. And how did we get here? I mean, we call this place Ravenwood Hollow, so thus the Hollow. And we just live on this lovely little cleared space in a forest and with a few acres of land around us. And still, still interacting with the world and all that. And at the same time, discovering what it's really like to live. It's a challenging thing to live where you need to carry your water in, where you need to chop your wood and ensure that you have adequate fuel for the winter and all of these things. And yet we're not really that far away from civilization, so it's not all that in terms of, but it would be disturbing to someone, I think, who really loves city life to have to live this way every day. It's been a discovery process for us. I love it. And at the same time, sometimes I just, be really nice to get into. We're in our house. This is my house right now. We're still working on it, so it's not ready to receive us yet. And so, yeah, there are conveniences that I would like to have, like running water, and definitely. But you see what's adequate for you and what you really need, and how many things you don't need. So it's been an eye opener in terms of the way we live, in terms of the way we live as a culture, and what we thought we needed before, and what we really don't need to be quite content in our life. There are many rewards to living this way, and the peace and serenity is one of the biggest ones.
That's amazing. What kind of just jumped out at me was where I'm at currently right now too is just conversations with our children, and how these ideas of what we need are being told to us. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're told that we need to have X, Y, Z. And so, my daughter is wanting all of the things that she's told that she's needing to have. And it's just it's like it's very eye opening, and a good reflection to hear you say too, right? It's like, what is it like that we need to find joy, to find the thing, like, to find that sweet spot? Because I feel like stuff is stuff, and it really does become a little bit mm, like clouding our visions. I don't know. Like, it feels like um, along with that piece comes like the unsatisfactory feeling as
Mm.
well. Like, there's never enough. Do you know what I mean? With
Yes.
the things. And so really paring down, and then what I'm hearing you say is that yeah, there's maybe some more space to just be instead of feeling like you have to have all of these, like you're saying, yes, of course, like running water and maybe things like that would obviously be very awesome. But it's wild what we can do or what we can have the space for if we're not always looking to attain all those, I don't know, the things, right? Like the stuff, like the
Yeah.
toys, the clothes, the when you're living in a space like you're living, there isn't room for that. Like physically, there's no room. So
There
it's like,
really isn't. I mean, my clothing, and I love to wear clothes. I love to buy clothes. I mean, I usually buy them, I must say, secondhand. I love secondhand
mm,
shopping. That's just me. But I have to store them in boxes in a safe, dry place that is not in the cabin because there's simply not room. So for years, I was working simply at my business and I wasn't going into the office. And certainly during COVID, nobody was going anywhere. So there wasn't a need for much more than shirts and jeans and that kind of thing. Now I'm doing also a job in an office that provides community service. So I need to dress for work, although I don't need to dress fancily, but I need access to my clothing. So that means that I have to go open up a box and look for it and then bring it in. And sometimes it can get aggravating. And, you think, oh, why does everything have to be so hard? And it's like, well, is it really hard when you think about, are we healthy? Do we have enough to eat? Is it very nice and warm where we are? Are we warm and dry? Do we have vehicles to drive to get us to work? Honestly, it makes you reflect upon, and what we have may be very basic and fairly simple, but we have enough. And I think of the teachings of some of the indigenous teachers I've heard that I've really been listening to lately about what is enough for ourselves, and enough that every member of the community could have enough, instead of people being hungry, instead of people not having the clothes they need in winter and that sort of thing. And so it's a reflection when you live fairly simply by necessity that, oh wow, this is really different. I can't run out to the convenience store. The stores get closed here around 6 or 7 during the week. You have to plan, and yet there's abundance. And so what do we consider abundance? And what, again, always that question, what am I attached to? What am I attached to?
well, it's like what you said, though. It's like to me, um, this making space, legitimately, like making space when we're not preoccupied with all of the stuff. I should speak from the eye, but I, have more time to go and connect with nature. And perhaps through that connection and making that space to connect with nature, I'm finding answers to questions or, um, it's a very interesting piece when we're not all cluttered, what could come to us, right?
It is. I mean, as within, so without, really. And then maybe we can let go of what we thought we needed and open ourselves to what does truly feed us. And so there's part of that process. I can remember my husband living here alone for some time when he was apprenticing at a job, and I was still in London holding down, the household there. And he was alone here, and it was dark, and he didn't even have the solar at that time. So at night it was a candle, and those several months that he spent here alone, really in darkness, because when it's dark in the forest, it is dark. There are no pole lights out here or no street lights. It's a dirt road. And so he said it was like going on like a very serious retreat in terms of contemplation, in terms of being with oneself. And he was by himself. And that would terrify some of us, right? Being in the dark in the forest alone at night, no electricity. So I applaud him for his courage in doing what he did to be able to make it possible for us to eventually move here.
And that's just so interesting too, because in the distractions, we don't have, again, the space to have these major contemplations like your husband had, right? And so it is when we start to still down, like start to sit in stillness and have that space, that the big things start to come up. And so I'm always saying this to Ian, right? My partner. It's just like, it's always in the doing. And then we forget to take the time to pause and see what is coming up. And then sometimes there is, the stuff that arises that we try to push back down, but it's an important process. That time,
is.
right?
Truly,
So
they,
yeah, it's a blessing that he was able to take that time over the several months, like you had mentioned, that he got to be in stillness, really, and in the quiet space in the forest.
It's that womb-like space of the darkness, they say, where real transformation can take place, but also real comfort and real rest can also happen in this place of, the darkness, the void, that place where there's a potential for things to come forward. And if we do that kind of inner journey, and we become able to sit in the darkness and find out that actually we can make an ally of the darkness. And there's another place where shamanic work or meditation or yoga practice, any of these practices can empower us to be able to sit still in the dark and work with the difficult things that show themselves, but also to germinate our potential. So the seed, you think of the seed in the earth, where's the light? But it reaches towards the light. It's part of its process to come up and part the earth and flower and bloom. And we can do that too. They even say, we always hear this in the yoga practice, right? The beautiful lotus flower is rooted in the mud and the murk at the bottom of the water. And it finds its way through this umbilical. It's connected still to that always, even though it's floating on the surface, and it's beautiful, like, unspeakably beautiful. And so we're kind of like that too. Yeah, we need to root down into the potential, into the gunk and the stuff that allows us, that feeds us too, even if it's coming face to face with our trauma in some cases, and finding ways, rather than simply being afraid, to know that we are watched, we are loved, we are part of something greater than ourselves, just this little form that we think we are. So shamanic work helps us by connecting us with helping spirits like power animals, or maybe gods and goddesses, or teachers in human form, or if you're a Celt, maybe the fairy work, or just simply coming into walking in nature and recognizing that each being you're interacting with, each tree, stone, or body of water, is very much part of the same beingness that you are. And if we start rooting into that and recognizing our place and part of, that we're part of rather than apart from, that's the kind of healing that shamanic journey work can bring us to. And even that whole attitude of walking slowly in nature and being aware that you are connected to each thing. Like Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, interbeing, we inter-are with everything else in the cosmos.
You're amazing, Kristi. And I always just find our conversations so profound, and I always take away so much from them. And I know that others listening to this episode will take away so much as well. And so I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom and sharing the space and your guidance always. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, what a privilege. What a lovely conversation. And thank you so much for inviting me on.
Take care.
You too.
Yay, you made it to the end of the Love Who You Are podcast. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and leave a review, or text a friend and share the love. These small actions make a big difference in this realm, and we thank you. And we have a present for you, a guide to creating and sustaining a home practice. In this free video, 7 experienced wellness leaders share what it takes to overcome the struggle of creating a home practice in anything: yoga, meditation, journaling, or whatever you'd love to do more of. You don't want to miss the wisdom of these incredible women. You'll find your free gift at DevaTree.com. That's DevaTree.com. We'll see you next time, and know that you are loved.